So just because every cyclist and his granny these days has a cycling computer, does that necessarily mean that you need one? It seems that having a cycling computer or not having a cycling computer is a bit of an issue these days. Some people really want them, some people can't be fussed with them. And I'm going to ask the question today that if you do want a cycling computer, are you just following the crowd? Basically, you've got a cycling computer because everyone else has got one and, well, that's what we've always done round here kind of thing. Now, it's a fact that most cyclists do have a cycling computer, I'm included. In fact, I've got about half a dozen cycling computers. As you imagine, I get sent quite a lot to test out. And I'll admit that I really like using my cycling computer. So the pros for actually using one is that it actually is a very useful piece of kit. I personally like using mine to measure my performance on my ride. I realise that I'm not some kind of trained athlete or anything like that, but nevertheless, I still want to be able to improve on my own personal times. And I'm of the opinion that if you can't measure something, then you can't improve something. And a cycling computer is really useful for that. And even if you're not really interested in improving your performance on the bike, a cycling computer is a really good way of just recording your ride. If nothing else, you've got the GPS track of where you've ridden, so that if one day in the future you think to yourself, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that ride, I wonder where I went, you can go back into your records, have a look, and the GPS track is there. And on a similar note, if you've got a GPS track or if you want to go somewhere that you don't really know, a cycling computer is an excellent way of navigating yourself there. Basically, it's sat nav on the bike. Another way that I like to use my cycling computer is to pace myself, particularly on longer rides. And I do that using heart rate. So it's a little bit like the rev counter on your car. And just as you wouldn't want to drive your car in the red for too long, it's exactly the same with me on the bike. So for instance, I know personally that my maximum heart rate is about 170 beats per minute. And I know that I can't ride at that pace for any length of time. So if my ride is, say, 2 hours, what I need to do is ride at a pace that I know that I can sustain, which is about 130 beats per minute. So as long as I'm riding there, I can ride a little bit longer and a little bit further. And again, there are those people, and I include myself in this, that just like the numbers. I just like looking at the numbers of my ride when I get home to see how far I've ridden, how fast I've ridden, what my average heartbeat is, what my power output's been. And I might not necessarily use that for anything useful. I just like looking at the numbers. So what are the reasons why perhaps you might not want a cycling computer? Well, I can easily imagine that top of that list is going to be the expense of buying the thing in the first place. These days you can get all kinds of cycling computers, ranging from the really cheap ones to the really expensive ones. But typically, I would imagine you're going to want one that's going to show you certain metrics, so heart rate, distance, cadence, etc., and things like GPS as well. And if you're looking at something like that, you're looking at spending between about £250 and £400, or about $300 to $500, and that is a significant investment. But what about if you don't want to spend that much money on a cycling computer, but you still want to be able to see all of your numbers? Well, some people rely on an expensive device that they already have, essentially their mobile phone. And these days, with things like Bluetooth sensors, so you can go out and get yourself a Bluetooth heart rate sensor, a Bluetooth cadence sensor, go out and get yourself some kind of app, and you can see all of those numbers on your phone, and you can even have GPS navigation and route recording. So you're not really missing out on any data that a cycling computer could record. Another reason for not having a cycling computer is that some people believe that they take away the fun of the ride. And I have to admit that I'm a little bit guilty of this here as well. Essentially what you're doing is out riding your bike through beautiful scenery, and all you're looking at are the numbers on your cycling computer going up in front of you. Now, I would imagine that many of us go out and ride our bikes for fun, and if all you're doing is just focusing on that screen instead of looking at the beautiful scenery around you, then yes, I can understand that you may be missing out on quite a lot of the pleasure of going out and cycling in the first place. And similarly, if you're focusing on the numbers on your cycling computer and they're not where you want them to be, even if you're not trying to improve your performance, that can leave you very, very disappointed. And again, that's not really the point if you want to go out and enjoy a ride. But as usual, it's like anything in cycling. The decision to have a cycling computer or not have a cycling computer should be down to you, the individual rider. You should make your choice and then not worry about what anybody else is doing. Cycling computers and the numbers they generate are great servants, but they should never become absolute masters. And I think that is sometimes a bit of a problem. I know, again, from my own personal point of view, it can be a bit of an issue. Cycling computers are great, as I say, if you want to measure something, if you want to improve something, if you want to navigate where you're going, if you want to remember where you've been, then yes, get a cycling computer. But if you really do just want to go out, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the weather, enjoy chatting to the people that you're cycling with, then perhaps no. Having a cycling computer is not probably the route that you want to go down. But there's no reason why you couldn't have a cycling computer and then restrict the amount of time that you're looking at the screen. It's a little bit like a mobile phone, I suppose. You need to kind of temper all of that and use a bit of common sense. Or maybe you could just leave the cycling computer at home from time to time. For the record, I personally am going to continue using a cycling computer, and that's purely and simply because I enjoy using one. But that obviously doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have one, or because all of the cyclists you know have one. Remember, at the end of the day, if you follow the crowd, you're only going to get as far as the crowd.